So 282mm install on an EK. You don't have to replace the hubs if you've got a facelift EJ9 because they're already 262s. If you've got a pre-facelift EJ9, they're going to be 242s and you're going to need to swap the hub out. But here you can see I'm just whipping off the old 262 brakes, moving to the 217mm bolts. And then when you move onto the disc, there's the little screws holding them in place. Sometimes these are rounded and you have to just drill the top of them off or literally beat the disc off and it'll shear the head off them. Luckily, these came out because this is such a low mileage car. So I'm using MC2, so Aero Deck Estate 282 calipers. But you can use EK9, DC2, Mark 1 CRV. You might have to do slightly different things. These are the discs I'm using. These are MGZR discs. Much thicker, much bigger, 20mm bigger than the facelift EJ9 ones. And then I'm just using CRV Mark 1 Brembo pads. These fit the NSX as well. And you can just see here the difference is massive. Obviously, these old brakes were absolutely knackered as well, so it'd be a good upgrade. I would apply a little bit of copper grease to the mating surface between the hub and the disc just to stop it sticking. It makes your life easier in the future. You need to make sure as well that you clean the discs down with some brake cleaner as well, because in transit they've got like an oily film on them to stop them rusting. Now, when fitting the passenger side, it went absolutely as expected. I had to do a little bit of filing of the inner front edge of the caliper carrier because it was touching the disc. But on the driver's side, what I actually found was the bottom carrier mount on the hub itself was slightly twisted. So I was having all sorts of problems getting it fitted and I was wondering why it wasn't fitting, so I had to bang it straight again. But you can see here where I've filed, you can see I'm showing you the passenger side now. That inner edge that I just pointed at is where I had to file off to give clearance for the disc. Otherwise, when it's bolted down, it pulls into the front of that disc and it won't turn. So just one of the small little things you have to do. In the past, when I fitted MB6 calipers to an EK9 set of hubs, I just had to use like a 1.5mm spacer in between the carrier and the hub itself to line up the center of that caliper with the disc so it didn't have any rubbing. But in this instance, I had to do a little bit of filing. Now, while you're at it, I would say to give it a good wire down, give it a good clean. This had quite a lot of thick paint on it, so I wanted to remove that because then you get problems with like pads not fitting properly and the little shims and things like that. So I just used the file to scrape off as much of it as I could, and you can see where I've filed down the carrier there, them shiny surfaces on that inner front edge. So once I'd filed it down, I bolted it to the car, and then what I also did is I used some wheel nuts to push the disc flat onto the hub itself to make sure when I was spinning it to check for clearance that it was spinning straight and it wasn't just wobbling out slightly because the wheel was not there pressing it in position. And now you can see after straightening up the mount on the hub a little bit and filing down that inner front edge of the carrier, it's spinning nice and freely, it's not touching, which is good. And then from there, before install, I just sprayed down the shims with a little bit of brake cleaner and used a wire brush to clean them up a little bit. Obviously, make sure you've got copper grease when you're doing discs and pads and stuff as well, because you can't use traditional grease, because otherwise, when the car's braking, obviously it heats up, it'll melt and it'll get all over the discs and you'll have no pedal, whereas copper grease has got a higher melting temp. Now here what I'm doing, I'm just using the vise to press in the piston on these 282 calipers before I fit them, so it'll fit over the new pads. And again, while it's in the vise, I'm just going to give it a clean up. Clean it down with the wire, clean it down with the file, get rid of all this old paint, because my car's a sleeper and I don't want it to have, purple calipers on it. It's a bit of a sure sign that something's going on. Okay, so now from here, what I've done is I've just put one bolt in the bottom of the caliper so it's hanging down there. Reinstalled the shims, they just click into position, top and bottom, and then one fits into the top of the caliper there to stop pad rattle. Now when installing pads, you want to use a little bit of copper grease on the contact surfaces, so where it runs in the shims there, just a little bit of copper grease, doesn't need to be a lot. And then I'd also put some on the piston as well, just where it contacts the pad, just to prevent any squeaks, but it doesn't need to be a lot at all. And then I'm just folding the caliper up there, pushing the slider in a little bit so I can get it in position. Putting a tiny bit of copper grease on the bolt, just to make life easier in the future. Bolting that into place. And then I'm just snipping down the line where I previously hung it to stop fluid getting absolutely everywhere. Reattaching that to the caliper, obviously with a copper crush washer either side of the line, and then the banjo bolt goes in there, and then there's 2 little 10 mils that attach the line bracket to the hub itself. And then where you've been handling it and touching it, you've got grease all over the disc again, so just spray it down, give it a wipe down so it's all nice and clean. And then at that point, you've just got to bleed the brakes. But there's loads of videos out there for that, whether you're doing it by yourself or with someone else. But what I'd say is, if you're doing this 282 install, whether it's with MB6 calipers, MC2 calipers, CRV Mark 1 calipers, EK9, DC2, just give yourself a little bit of extra time in case you run into some issues where you need to file down the carrier slightly, or you need some washers in between. Just, it's not always an exact bolt on, bolt off. Even though it has been sometimes for me, you know what I mean? But it's just not always that simple. And, you know, these are old cars now, and maybe dodgy casting sometimes and stuff like that. So an easy install, but just give yourself some time.